Hey class, so today we're going to be talking about independent and dependent variables. All right, this is a fairly simple concept that we're only going to take a couple minutes on. What we're talking about is independent variables which stand alone and dependent variables which depend on, that's where the dependent word, on that independent variable. So if I go up to a soda machine and I press the button and a soda comes out, I have to press the button first. The soda coming out depends on me pressing the button. So for this, we have this phrase we're going to try to remember. Y depends on X. Okay? So if I have a situation, for instance, if I have miles per hours traveled, I'm going to run out of room. Miles per hour traveled. What depends on what, right? The number of miles that I go depends on the number of hours I'm traveling at a certain speed. So miles is going to depend on the number of hours. So I literally am going to have Y per X, miles per hour. Now, let's switch it up a little bit. If I have the cost per shirt. So I've got some shirts that I'm buying and they cost a certain amount of money. Well, that total cost at the register is going to depend on how many shirts I buy, the number of shirts. The number of shirts isn't going to depend on the total sale. It can only go one way. So again, the Y per X. So now I know what my Y is and I know what my X is, which is going to help me when I'm graphing or I put on a table or I'm finding the constant of proportionality. So let's look at this a different way, because so far it looks like Y is always coming before X. But now I think I can come up with a situation where it's another way. So what if I have a test and I have the number of correct responses versus the score on my test? Well, what depends on what? Let's think about this. So does the number of correct responses depend on my score? Or does my score depend on my number of correct responses? What comes first? Well, first I have to take the test. I have to get answers right. And that is going to then tell me what my score is. So my score actually very much depends on how many I get correct. My score, my Y, depends on my number correct. So my Y is actually on this side. Here's another example like that. If I have the number of jumping jacks, and I'm going back to JJ, number of jumping jacks versus my number of calories burned, right? Well, if I look at this, Y depends on X. What depends on what? My number of jumping jacks depend on my number of calories burned. Well, I have to do the jumping jacks to burn the calories. So actually, the number of calories burned depends on the number of jumping jacks, right? Because I have to do the jumping jacks to then burn the calories. So that tells me my X and my Y. So when you're looking at any word problem in any situation, see if you can remember this phrase. Y depends on X. What is your Y and your X? What needs to happen first in order for you to get your outcome? You have to press the button to get the soda, right? You have to pick the number of shirts to get the total cost. You have to get a number of correct responses to then get your final score. You have to input your number of jumping jacks or your number of miles run to then know your amount of calories burned. What is your independent variable, your X, versus your dependent variable, Y? Push the button, get the response.